I'm a bit obsessed with time, and I was the sort of person years ago who used to run around from place to place trying to, rather than walk. And people used to say to me, "Why are you running around everywhere?" And I genuinely used to reply by saying it was because I was a slow reader and I needed to make up the time. Which is true, but I didn't actually realise at that time that it was the basics of how I could improve my life, or where I could improve my life. Just very recently, I spent 41 days on my own in a tiny little rowing boat rowing across the Atlantic Ocean. And I did it after just 11 weeks of Googling it as an idea. The reason I did it was because there's been a pattern in my life of improvements whenever I throw myself into a difficult situation. Whenever I put myself or challenge myself, I seem to make massive gains for myself. I always look back and think that it was time well spent, and I get amazing life metaphors from each experience. And I think time is possibly the most precious thing that we have. It's no wonder people have like a midlife crisis or a quarter-life crisis, although don't panic if you have one. I think it's just your ambition giving you a kick up the bum. But I think it's how do we utilise our time most effectively? When I was at school, I was very dyslexic. I couldn't keep up with the work that was in front of me, but I loved sport. And sport kind of got me through school. It was somewhere I could get rid of my energy, and I had a bit hyperactive, and it was something I really enjoyed. But when I left school at 16, I was a bit of a lost soul. I didn't know really where I was going. I had massive ambition, like crazy ambition. I wanted a nice car, I wanted a nice house, I wanted all the finer things in life. But I didn't know how to channel my energy into the right places in order to get to that end goal. I kept looking at the end goal thinking, that's where I want to get to, but the time was almost off-putting to me. And so I sort of failed to look at those steps. By the time I was 30, I was really frustrated, but I had two kids who were the light of my life, loved them to pieces, but I was very frustrated, and so I needed to find some sort of outlet. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I started running, and that was kind of got me back into sport. And then I decided to start doing triathlons. And then a friend of mine said to me, who's just sat there, let's go and climb the Matterhorn. So I thought, okay, cool, let's go and do that. I had no climbing experience whatsoever. And so we decided, okay, so we set off to Switzerland, and we sort of did a couple of days training in the mountains where I sort of realized that I was really scared of heights. It wasn't a great time to find that out. And so we sort of did our 2 days training, and we go up to the Matterhorn, and it's much easier climbing up a tree rather than coming down it. And we sort of got to the top of the mountain, and we sort of did some high fives and took some pictures and stuff. And the guide had sort of said it's probably another 4 or 5 hours to get back down again. So we sort of made our way back down the mountain, and about halfway down, I was completely mentally spent and physically drained, and I was just kind of stuck to the side of this mountain, not really able to move. And I remember, he said, sort of must be about halfway down now, so probably 2 hours left. So I just looked at my watch, I was like, okay, it's 2 hours, 2.5 hours, that's it. So just focus on the steps. And that's what I did. It's just literally every handhold, every foothold until I was at the bottom of the mountain. And suddenly I was down and it was all okay, and I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. Only 2 years later, the opportunity to do it again came up, and so I said yes, but I just put in the steps in time method, and so just knew exactly how long it would take, well, roughly, and I just did the steps in order to get all the way up and then all the way back down again. And I made it, and I felt good. I sort of, I learned about myself, and it was a really good thing. And around that sort of same time, I was building an app, and I sort of spent 4 years building this app, and I didn't know anything about technology at all. It was something I dived into. I had previously been in property development, and I built a decent app. I learned a huge amount, and I met some great people. Unfortunately, I had to shut it down. It was a fail. And it stung me a lot, it hurt me, and I felt quite down about it. But essentially I did take some positives from it. I'd sort of done this process of just going through a tick sheet every day and trying to tick off at least 3 things every day. And so I sort of achieved something in some sort of way. However, I needed another challenge. I needed like a rebound challenge. And so I Googled what's one of the hardest things that you can do physically or challenge. And one of the things that popped up was rowing across the Atlantic. So I was like, okay, cool. But most people did it and sort of it took 2 years to prepare for it. And they sort of did it in teams of people and they had support boats. But I wanted to do it immediately. And it's sort of diving in a bit too quickly as usual. But so I found a boat. I did seamanship courses, sea navigation courses, sea survival courses, VHF radio courses, all these different things, and I was sort of ticking all this stuff off that I had to do. Until the sort of day came, 11 weeks later, I was literally pulling away from Gran Canaria, saying goodbye to my dad on the shore, thinking, okay, I'm going now. And I was in the deep end, quite literally, and about 2 hours, there was two things I had to remember. One was I had to make 7 litres of water a day. Half of it was for drinking, and half of it was for rehydrating my food. It was like space food. And so it's like 4 meals a day and 3 litres of water. And then the second thing I had to remember was the fact that I had to stay tied onto the boat because basically if you fall into the water, the boat goes faster than you. The wind just takes it and you're going to get left at sea. So I set off, and about 4 hours in, I'm sort of done my first rowing stint, feeling pretty good about myself, although slightly weird. And I sort of look back in the cabin, and I've got this massive pool of water inside my cabin. I thought, okay, this isn't good at all, and my water maker wasn't working, it's just had a leak in it. So I spent about 4 hours trying to fix it, and I think I got it to the point where I was producing about 1.5 litres of water a day. So straight away I was mentally thinking, okay, this is a bad situation, a bit like my start to this talk. And so basically I realised, okay, I'm going to have to cut my food down to half the amount that I was supposed to be eating, and also I'm going to have half a litre of water a day as opposed to 3. And this is hot work. It's, you're near the equator. So mentally I'm thinking, I'm thinking Maydaying, but I think, okay, I'm still alive. I'll just keep going. I'll keep going. And then sort of 2 days in, the weather started to get nasty. And I mean, it's sort of 25 knots, 30 knots winds, and it was sort of mostly that, and then occasional breaks in the weather where I could, actually have a bit of a breather. So the weather was really bad, and bearing in mind a metre cubed of water is a ton, these waves were sort of, 2 stories high, and they're coming at you from different angles. And I thought I was meant to be rowing across the Atlantic. I didn't realise I was going to get beaten up so much by all these waves. And when they do hit you, it's exactly the same as being hit by a truck. I mean, in a car accident, you just get hit across the whole inside the cabin, or if you're outside, you just get thrown out of the boat and the whole boat capsizes. And it's a really weird feeling. You're in this ocean and you're very, very vulnerable. So mentally and physically, I'm just getting lower and lower and lower. And then another day comes, and on the 11th day, and I was outside the boat and I was just about to start rowing. Another wave hits, the boat goes over, and I sort of hold onto the boat and I pull myself back in. As I get back into the boat, I look down and my seat has gone, my rowing seat, which is basically about 90% of your power of rowing, your glutes and your quads. So I'd only be able to use my arms. It's basically gone to the bottom of the ocean. So I knew then also it's going to take me much longer than I wanted. And so I'm mentally just getting worse and worse and worse. It's not good. And then the final straw, I think for me, and I'm wanting to Mayday all the time because it's just getting worse. And the final straw for me was I had to, I just sort of was making some more food for myself and sort of just got back into the cabin, shut the door again, hit my wave, and capsized, and there's chili con carne over the whole cabin. I mean, it's funny now, but oh my God, it stinks, and it's all over me. It's all in the cabin, all in my bed, and everything like that. So all over the electrics, and I'm sort of a broken man by this stage, and just on my hands and knees, naked, scooping this chili con carne up. It's not a pretty sight, and it was at that moment where I thought, I need to Mayday, I need to get out of here, I can't do this. And so it was right then that it was a choice, and it was a really simple choice, Mayday or find a way forward. So very quickly, it was like, I can't Mayday. That wasn't really an option for me in my head. I was still alive and I was still making a slightly pathetic progress. But so it was find a way forward. So the first thing that I did was I just wrote on the wall 0 to 50 in terms of days. I thought it would take about 50 days. And then I just crossed out the first 11 days. And as soon as I did that, it gave me a tiny little piece of positivity in my brain where I thought, okay, there's progress. And as soon as I felt that bit of progress, I was like, okay, I need to do some other stuff. And so I started eating at the same time every day. Then I'd sort of, wash the boat and I'd sort of have a clean and I'd do some squats. And by this stage, I was just doing squats outside the boat. I was sort of doing about 150 a day just because my legs were just twitching like crazy because they weren't doing anything. Usually we walk up and down stairs or walk around buildings, but my legs were just sat there doing nothing. So I was finding these things to do, and then suddenly the hours were going by, and then I could cross off another day, and then suddenly I was crossing off another day, and then a week goes by, and then 10 days, and then I'm halfway. And I think, cool, I'm halfway. I've never been in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean before. This is a new experience. And then before long, like after 41 days, I could see Barbados in the distance, and it was an amazing feeling. The sea went from this like aggressive, dark thing that was trying to get me the whole time to this beautiful sort of turquoise, and the green of the island just popped out at me, and it was the trees were unbelievable, and everything just looked incredible. And my daughter came out and a friend of mine on a boat, and they gave me some cheese and Marmite sandwiches and a new rowing seat. And sort of, I wanted to kiss them and hug them, obviously, but I sort of put the seat in, devoured these sandwiches, and did the last couple of kilometers into the port, where I was greeted by friends and family, and it was an amazing feeling just to see all these people. And I gave my dad a big hug, and there was lots of tears and stuff. But I hadn't thought of that moment until I was right there. And in fact, I was still in a bit of a state of the process, in the steps in time in order to get there. And I also sort of turned out to be the 76th person to have made the voyage, and I ended up with the 4th fastest time to do it. But it was a success, and it was a goal reached. But I guess for me, like, you're just not going to sort of achieve anything unless you focus on the steps. If you're trying to run around from place to place trying to make up time, you're not going to get to that goal. So it's the steps that count. And I think if you can focus on those as hard as you possibly can, there's always going to be days where you're going to lose a seat, or you're going to have a lack of water, or sometimes you're going to get covered in chili con carne. But unless you focus on the steps, then you're not going to achieve anything. So all I could possibly, hopefully, say to everyone is just set your goal, whatever it is, whether it's big, medium, or small. Set your goal, allocate time for it, and then just focus on the steps. Thank you.